I'm watching U.S. Navy steel bolt out of Bahrain right now. This isn't a drill. It's the scorched earth of a 15-point deal that just hit the furnace. At 4:17 Universal Time Coordinated today, satellite lenses and maritime transponders caught a high-velocity exodus of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The Fifth Fleet's hub is emptying. This is the first time since the 2020 brinkmanship that we've seen this specific formation. It's the signal that the Sazemka safety net has snapped. We are looking at the immediate spark of kinetic fire and a three-front escalation the mainstream maps are too scared to draw. Tonight, we isn't just about the why, it's the when. I will strip back the 15th point of the U.S. deal that Tehran branded a death warrant and the role of the Pakistani couriers who just walked out of the room. The Pentagon is trying to drown this out with routine training signals, but the blackouts choking the Persian Gulf tell the truth. What is the red clause in point 15 that triggered the no-surrender declaration? Why did Washington use Islamabad as a backchannel instead of the Swiss? The envelope is open, the protocol is live, and the world is holding its breath. The secret meeting in Islamabad wasn't a public negotiation. It was a desperate bypass of the UN's hollow halls. A U.S. envoy shoved over a sealed 15-point memorandum in a setting that felt more like a Cold War handoff than a modern sit-down. This wasn't just paper. The U.S. delivered an ultimatum wrapped in a threat, handed to the only neighbor Iran still trusts enough to crack the door. To understand this, look at the intelligence vacuum. Washington ghosted the Swiss and the Qataris because they needed a delivery pipe that hit the very top of the Iranian pyramid without getting snagged by reformist gatekeepers. Islamabad didn't just host. They stood as the muscle guaranteeing the message. This memo contained the red clause, a jagged set of boundaries regarding the heavy iron Iran is pushing into the Strait of Hormuz. When point 15 flashed back to Tehran, the response was a no-surrender declaration. This wasn't a standard podium speech. It was the gears of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, grinding into high gear. On the surface, the scripts from the State Department and the Iranian Foreign Ministry suggest the status quo is holding. Washington drones on about regional stability and freedom of navigation, while Tehran broadcasts the usual lines about national sovereignty. If you only read the tickers, you'd think this was just more desert posturing. However, the rot between these polished lies and the clatter of treads on the ground is reaching a breaking point. The Pentagon claims the naval surge in the North Arabian Sea is a pre-scheduled exercise, but tracking data shows a synchronization that dwarfs any drill. The USS Abraham Lincoln Strike Group didn't just arrive. It sprinted, showing up 4 days early to park within striking distance of Iran's coastal spine. Simultaneously, Tehran denies any change in their missile posture. Yet, internal IAEA reports whisper that inspectors have been barred from sites for 48 hours, with officials claiming technical maintenance. This gap is where the real blood is spilled. Strategic ambiguity is being shoved aside for tactical deception. The Iranian naval commander went on TV to claim the waters are safe for trade, even as his crews were sowing a new generation of acoustic mines in the deep-water guts of the Gulf of Oman. These mines are built to ignore the hum of fishing boats but wake up when they hear the deep throb of an oil tanker or the sharp whine of a Western destroyer. In D.C., the press leaked data shows mobile ballistic missile batteries crawling out of their central plateau bunkers toward the southern cliffs. This isn't a defensive crouch. It's the footprint of a nation chambering around. The heaviest proof of this shift is carved into numbers and imagery that can't be deleted. Private satellite feeds show a hive of activity at the Bandar Abbas naval base. Between Tuesday and Thursday, the swarm of fast attack craft at the main piers nearly tripled. More importantly, heavy transport convoys are idling at the mouths of the underground missile silos near Shiraz. These are the rigs used to haul Shahab. 3 components. The kind of reach that can touch every capital in the region. Global money is also screaming. In the last 72 hours, maritime insurance for the Persian Gulf has gone vertical. Standard premiums have lunged upward by 400%, a spike that only happens when underwriters smell smoke. Meanwhile, the spot price of Brent crude has snapped away from supply data. It's now trading on pure fear, with traders betting on a chokehold on the 21 million barrels that squeeze through the Strait of Hormuz every day. Inside Iran, the rial is hemorrhaging on the black market. While the official rate stays frozen, the street rate has collapsed as the elite scramble to turn paper into gold or hard currency. This domestic panic proves the population knows this isn't just another cycle of noise. They aren't just hedging, they are bracing for a total system crash. Even the sky is going dark. Flight tracking shows a void of civilian air traffic over the Gulf at night. This mirrors the GPS jamming and signal spoofing reported by electronic warfare analysts. When the military starts blinding civilian airliners, it's to mask the shadow of stealth wings and drones sliding into strike positions. To see the full collision, you have to watch the narratives fracturing. In Tehran, the Supreme Leader's latest address focused on strategic patience, but he underscored that the clock is ticking. It's a message to his own people. We aren't looking for a fight, but we will strike if the red clause is enforced. The White House is walking a razor's edge. They are being crushed by allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia to hammer Iran's expansion, but with an election looming, they can't afford an oil shock. This creates a schizophrenic posture, offering olive branches with one hand while ordering B-52s to the theater with the other. The EU is watching this unfold with growing terror. Cables from Brussels show they feel ghosted by the Islamabad backchannel. They fear a misstep will ignite a refugee surge that would make 2015 look like a trickle. Meanwhile, Russia and China are playing a cold game. Moscow is cheering the chaos, knowing a Gulf war would send oil prices through the roof, padding the Kremlin's war chest. Beijing, however, is the biggest buyer of Iranian crude and is terrified of a blockade. They've warned Tehran that if the strait closes, Chinese support, both political and economic, evaporates instantly. This Chinese pressure is the only real leash currently holding back the IRGC's most aggressive commanders. The fallout of this standoff ripples far beyond the sand. If the Persian Gulf turns into a graveyard of ships, the global supply chain faces a systemic cardiac arrest. We are looking at a 20% gutting of the world's daily oil supply. No amount of U.S. fracking or North Sea drilling can bridge that gap overnight. The result is a global energy freeze that would trigger a deep recession in every major market. Geopolitically, we are seeing the birth of a new bloc system. The U.S. is welding together a network with Israel and the Gulf monarchies, a unified shield of air defense and intelligence. Opposite them, this isn't just a spat over a waterway. It's a war for the global steering wheel. If Iran defies the U.S. ultimatum and wins, the era of American hegemony in the Middle East is dead. The shipping industry would be hit with a sledgehammer. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's vital artery. If insurers pull the plug, the flow of liquid natural gas to Europe and Japan dies. We are talking about rolling blackouts and industrial rot in countries that have spent years trying to pivot away from Russian gas. Finally, there is the nuclear shadow. If Tehran feels its conventional muscle can't stop a U.S. strike, the push to cross the nuclear threshold will become an obsession. Hardliners are already shouting that the only reason Washington is this bold is because Iran doesn't have the bomb yet. If they make that final sprint, it sparks a nuclear arms race that would see Saudi Arabia and Turkey reaching for their own warheads. 3 scenarios are currently on the table for the coming weeks. The first is the Islamabad cooldown. Both sides stare into the furnace and blink. The U.S. pulls back its naval teeth, and Iran wheels its ballistic batteries back into the silos. This would lead to more secret talks to build a gray zone of survival. It doesn't fix the hate, but it keeps the world from burning today. The second path is a limited kinetic exchange, the spark. A drone clips a tanker, or a U.S. destroyer trades paint with an IRGC fast boat. This spirals into a targeted bombing run. The U.S. hammers coastal missile sites, and Iran retaliates with asymmetric hits across the region. This tit-for-tat is a nightmare because it relies on 2 enemies reading each other's minds. One miscalc, and a small fire becomes a general war. The third is the Hormuz Closure. If the regime feels the red clause is a noose, they may play their final card and attempt to sink ships but a cornered IRGC might decide that if they can't sell their oil, the world won't have any either. This would lead to a full-scale maritime war that could last months and redraw the economic map of the planet. Regardless of the path, the old world is gone. The delivery of that Islamabad envelope has pulled the pin on a grenade. We are watching the flight paths of logistics planes and the positioning of hospital ships, the truest indicators of what the generals actually expect. The Persian Gulf is a tinderbox, and the Islamabad envelope was the match. We've moved past the phase of diplomatic theater into a cold reality of tactical movement. The question is no longer about intent. It's about whether either side has the room to back down without losing everything. How is this playing out on your local news? And are you seeing the price of fuel react at your pumps? Given the three paths I've laid out, the cool down, the spark, or the closure, which one do you think the dice will land on? I'll be in the comments reading your takes for the next update. We'll keep tracking the steel on the water. See you in the next one. Would you like me to generate a thumbnail concept or a community post to accompany this updated script?